In a small fishing village called Ine, on a quiet inlet of the Sea of Japan, an entire row of boathouses lines the water. They have stood there since the 19th century. They are black, charred black, and they have never once been painted. Every Western neighbor would have replaced them twice over. The Japanese ones are still standing. Before I go further, I want to say one honest thing. When I say rotting fence, I do not mean the board where a screwdriver sinks deep with no resistance. That board is gone. You replace it. What I mean is the fence most Western homeowners are looking at right now. Gray wood, surface cracks, splitting grain, the fence that looks one bad winter from collapse. That fence is not ruined. It is asking for a different kind of attention. And today I show you exactly what that attention looks like. No paint, no stain, no product to reorder. One afternoon, a torch and a technique that has been working in Japan for 200 years. Here is what the Western answer looks like. You buy a can of stain, $25, $45. You spend a Saturday scrubbing and rolling. 2 years later, the finish is gone. You buy another can. Professionals charge $650 to over $2,000 per visit, and they come back every 2 to 4 years. Over 30 years, maintaining a fence the Western way costs $7,000 on the low end in professional fees alone. $25,000 is not unusual, and at the end of 30 years, the fence is still on the same decline curve. You have been treating symptoms, not wood. I am Kenji. For 40 years I have kept the same small home, and I have learned most of what I know from the women who kept it before me. My grandmother did not buy products for the fence. She used what the craft gave her and a technique her own mother had passed down to her. That technique has a name, Yakisugi, and today it belongs to you too. I am going to walk you through this in 5 steps. First, how to assess which boards can be saved, then how to prepare the surface, then the charring itself, the heart of the method, then how to finish the char, and finally a traditional sealing treatment that has been used in Japan for 800 years. By the end, you will have everything you need to protect that fence for the next 80 to 100 years. Not 2, not 4, 80. If you want a calmer, quieter home, one that asks less of you every year, subscribe and we will do this together. Now let me explain why charring works, because once you understand the mechanism, you will never look at a can of stain the same way again. Wood rots because of fungi. Rot fungi release enzymes into wood fibers, breaking down cellulose, the structural carbohydrate inside the wood, and digesting the result. That is what rot is. Fungi eating the sugars inside your fence boards. They need 3 things to begin: cellulose for food, moisture for their environment, and an unprotected surface to enter through. Western stains and paints try to protect wood by putting a film on top of it. The problem is that film is always temporary. UV light breaks it down. Moisture gets underneath it. Thermal expansion cracks it. Once there is a crack, water enters, and fungi follow right behind. Yakisugi solves a different problem. It does not add a film. It changes what the surface of the wood actually is. When you apply sustained direct flame to a wood surface, the outer fibers convert to carbon. Pure carbon contains no hemicellulose, no carbohydrates, no digestible chemistry at all. The fungi arrive at that surface and find nothing to eat. Nothing. They do not start because there is nothing to begin with. My grandmother had a saying I have translated for you as simply as I can. You can grow mold on bread. but you cannot grow mold on charcoal. Yakisugi turns the outside of your fence into charcoal, biologically, chemically, permanently. Carbon also repels water. Where raw wood absorbs moisture and swells, the charred layer causes water to bead and run off. The fungi have no food and no moisture. They do not arrive. Step 1 is the assessment. It is the step Western homeowners skip most often, and it is the most important of all. Take a flathead screwdriver, find any board that looks soft, discolored, or suspect. Press the tip firmly into the wood, your hand only, no hammering. If the tip sinks 1/4 of an inch or more with light pressure, that board's cell walls have failed. Mark it with chalk and replace it. Yakisugi cannot rebuild structural strength that is no longer there. If the screwdriver penetrates less than 1/4 inch and the core beneath feels solid, that board is a candidate for charring. The surface may look frightening. The core is what matters. Also check moisture. Wood must be genuinely dry before charring. Even in summer, boards that look dry on the surface may hold moisture at the center. Use an inexpensive moisture meter, under $20 at any hardware store, and look for below 15% moisture content. If you do not have one, allow 2 to 3 consecutive sunny, dry days after any rain before you begin. This 10-minute assessment is the difference between a fence that lasts 100 years and a charred board that still fails. Step 2 is preparation. Brush each board clean of loose bark, flaking material, lichen, moss, and any prior finish. A stiff, natural bristle brush and a painter's scraper are all you need. No chemicals, no soaking, no water. Total cost, $5 to $15 if you do not already own a scraper and brush. The reason preparation matters: the char layer forms through even heat, penetrating the wood's surface fibers. Moisture in those fibers turns to steam during charring and lifts the char away from the wood. Previous coatings block heat transfer and produce toxic fumes when burned. Patchy preparation produces patchy protection. 10 minutes per board, brushed clean. The Western habit this replaces: rolling new stain directly over the graying, peeling old finish. Sealing the problem in rather than addressing it. It looks fine for one season and then peels in sheets. Step 3 is the charring itself. This is yakisugi, yaki meaning fire-grilled, sugi meaning Japanese cedar. The traditional method binds 3 boards face inward into a triangular chimney. A fire lit at the base creates a natural updraft, drawing heat evenly across all 3 interior faces simultaneously, producing a deep, even char in 3 to 5 minutes per set. That method is still used by craftspeople and producers in Japan today. For a Western residential fence, use a propane weed burner torch with a wide fan tip, not a pencil tip, which creates hot spots. These run $25 to $45 at any hardware store. A 20-pound propane canister costs $20 to $25 and is sufficient for approximately 50 linear feet of fence. Move in slow, overlapping passes along the grain. Keep the flame 4 to 6 inches from the surface. Work in 2 to 3 foot sections. You are watching for a specific pattern. In Japanese it is called gyo-mi, the characteristic alligator skin or fish scale cracking that develops as the carbonized layer forms. Fine, consistent cracking across the surface, deep black coloration throughout the section, that is correct, patchy gray-brown areas, uncracked patches, more heat needed, white ash appearing. You have gone too far. Move on. Your target char depth is 3 to 5 millimeters. The gyo-mi pattern is your guide. Now, because it is July, I want to say something directly about fire safety. Before you begin any torch work outdoors, check your local fire regulations. In drought-declared regions, on red flag warning days, do not work with open flame. Clear all dry vegetation within 6 feet of the fence before you start. Keep a garden hose or a 5-gallon bucket of water at arm's reach throughout. Never char near a fence shared with a dry shed, garage, or trellis. Wear safety glasses and a half-mask respirator. Carbon dust is a fine particulate, and you do not want it in your lungs. Work in the morning, never in the peak heat of the afternoon. This is not a liability warning. It is what careful people have always known. Step 4 is brushing. Allow each charred section to cool naturally for 10 to 15 minutes. Do not flood it with water, which can cause thermal shock in the char layer. Then brush firmly along the grain with a stiff wire brush. A light brushing, called suyaki in Japanese, retains the full alligator skin texture. Deepest black, maximum protection, most dramatic burnt look. Loose carbon will transfer to clothing on contact. A medium brushing nusuhiki removes the outer loose carbon and reveals the grain beneath in a silver-black tone. Less nice texture, more architectural. This is right for most residential fences. A heavier brushing, sujakuri, leaves a lightly smoked grain-forward surface. Still weather-resistant, but it will need re-oiling more often. A wire brush or wire cup brush for a drill. $5 to $15. Step 5 is the sealing treatment. This step is optional, but it is also 800 years old, and I would not skip it. The treatment is called kakishibu, fermented juice pressed from unripe, astringent persimmons, not ripe ones, unripe before the fruit sweetens and the tannin concentration falls. Kakishibu has been used in Japan since the Heian period as a penetrating preservative for wood, washi paper, and fabric. It is not a paint. It is a tannin solution that penetrates wood fibers and then polymerizes on contact with air and sunlight, curing slowly into a stable, waterproof, antimicrobial surface. The chemistry is similar to a slow-cure resin. The resin is entirely natural. Brush it onto the charred, brushed surface with a natural bristle brush, working along the grain. Wipe away any bubbles. For exterior wood, apply 2 coats, allowing 24 hours between each. When it goes on, kakishibu is cleared to pale amber. Over the following days and weeks, UV light will deepen it toward warm tobacco brown, then toward a rich reddish dark tone. That color change is evidence of curing. The deeper it gets, the more completely the tannins have polymerized. The fence is still curing months after you applied it. That is the correct result, not a flaw. Kakishibu is available from Western specialty woodworking suppliers for roughly $20 to $45 per 500 milliliters. If you cannot source it, raw tung oil is a genuine penetrating alternative, not identical, but it shares the same logic of hardening inside the wood rather than sitting on top of it. Tung oil runs $15 to $25 per quart. Reapplication every 5 to 15 years when the surface looks dry and faded. That is not a cycle. That is maintenance. Now, several things I have seen recommended online that I want to address directly. Pressure washing as fence preparation at the 2,000 to 3,000 psi that most homeowners use. Pressure washing physically destroys soft wood fibers. It leaves gouges, raises the grain, and drives water deep into any existing cracks. As the wood dries, those fibers expand and contract repeatedly, accelerating the splitting and rot you were trying to stop. If you must clean with water pressure, the safe range for cedar or pine is 500 to 1200 psi with a 25 or 40 degree tip. Most people use 4 times that amount. Painting over weathered wood. Paint is a surface film applied over gray or softening wood. It seals moisture that was already inside. As temperatures change, that moisture moves. The paint blisters, cracks, and peels, often within a single season on exterior wood. Peeled paint creates an entry point for water far worse than bare, uncoated wood. Products sold in Western hardware stores with Japanese imagery, claiming ancient formulas. I have looked at many of these. Without exception, they contain synthetic resins, petroleum derivatives, and biocides with no documented connection to Japanese craft tradition. The real Japanese technique requires a propane torch, not a can with a painted landscape on the label. Salt on wood. It circulates occasionally as a natural wood hardener. It is not Japanese. Salt corrodes metal fasteners and nails, leaches into soil, and does not meaningfully protect wood fiber from fungal decay. I also want to be honest about what Yakisugi will not do, because honest tools are the only ones worth trusting. Yakisugi does not restore structural integrity to a board that has already failed the screwdriver test. If the core is compromised, the char layer has nothing to hold on to. Replace the board first, then char. Yakisugi does not adequately protect fence posts buried directly in soil. Ground contact rot is a separate problem requiring pressure-treated lumber, metal post anchors, or concrete footings. The charring handles the faces above ground. The ground itself requires a different solution. Yakisugi does not make wood fireproof. The carbon layer slows ignition by insulating the uncharred timber beneath. It buys time. It does not prevent combustion. I have seen this claimed. The research does not support it reliably. The rot resistance case is well documented. Be cautious about the fire resistance claim, and the color will fade. Deep black becomes silver gray over years of UV exposure. That change is purely cosmetic. The carbon layer's protective properties remain substantially intact long after the visual has shifted. The protection outlasts the look. Now let me tell you where this method actually comes from, because the history matters. The village of Ain sits at the mouth of a circular inlet on the Sea of Japan coast in Kyoto Prefecture. It is not a famous place. There is no celebrated temple. What Ini has is a ring of fungi, boathouses, built so that a fisherman could drive his boat directly into the ground floor and sleep in the rooms above. The facades of these fungi, the faces looking directly out at the water, are clad in Yakisugi boards, charred black. Some have been there for well over 100 years. The Sea of Japan brings salt air, sustained humidity, and hard winters to that inlet. Wood exposed to that environment without protection would not survive 2 decades. The charred cedar faces all of it. It stands. This is not a designer application, not an architecture prize. A fishing village's practical answer to a practical problem. Salt air and rain rot wood fast, and the people who live there do not have time or money to keep replacing it. So they learned that fire makes wood immune. The technique spread through the Edo period, from roughly 1603 through 1868, not because it was elegant, but because it worked, cost nothing beyond time, and used locally abundant cedar. The word yakisugi did not appear in a printed dictionary until 1930, documented by University of Tokyo researchers, but the technique it names had already been practiced for nearly 200 years before anyone wrote it down. The craft existed before it had a standardized name. In 2007, the architect Terunobu Fujimori built a house in Nagano clad entirely in hand-charred cedar. He and 10 friends spent one full day burning 400 planks by hand. That house, the Yakisugi house, is now studied in architecture schools around the world. The wood has not been touched since. Ini's fishermen were doing the same work in the 1800s. Without the architecture school, here is what this looks like in practice starting this week. The one-time work: walk your fence with a screwdriver. Mark failed boards, replace them. Let new wood dry for 2 to 3 sunny days. Brush each board clean. Char in sections, 1 to 2 afternoons for a typical residential fence. Brush to your chosen finish. Apply kakishibu or tung oil. Total cost in materials, $50 to $125 one time. Compare that to the Western alternative. Professional fence staining runs $650 to over $2,000 per visit, returning every 2 to 4 years. Over 30 years, that is $7,000 to $25,000, and the fence is still declining. After the one-time work, annual maintenance is a 10-minute walk. Look for any spots where the char has chipped from physical impact. Touch them up with the torch. Brush off surface dust or lichen with a dry, stiff brush. That is everything required for an entire year. Every 5 to 15 years, when the surface looks dry, reapply kakishibu or tung oil. One coat, one afternoon, no seasonal stripping, no spring sanding, no autumn sealing coat. The Yakisugi fence does not participate in that cycle. It simply stands. In Japan, we do not look at an old fence and see failure. We see wood that has been working hard. It deserves a better answer than paint. There is a word in Japanese, mottainai. It expresses a specific feeling, the regret of wasting something that still has value. It comes from a Buddhist idea that materials deserve respect. In the context of a fence, mottainai changes the question you ask entirely. The Western question is it ruined? Behind that question is usually a product purchase or a replacement order. The mottainai question is, what does it still have to give? A gray, weathered, surface-checked fence is not ruined. It has been outside for years, standing through seasons, doing its work. Its surface has aged. Its core, if the screwdriver confirms it, is still there. It does not need a can. It needs one afternoon and a 200-year-old answer. My grandmother taught me to look at old things carefully before deciding they were finished. That practice has saved me from many purchases. It has also saved me from many regrets. A fence protected with Yakisugi will outlast the people who charred it. That is not a boast. That is the point. You do the work once, and then you are done.